I've been setting up the role configurations, like the role seeding, and one of the issues with databases really is that there's a lot of mix up and mash up about whether or not you should seed data inside of the migration or you should have a separate seeding mechanism. And now Microsoft went out of its way to add this particular thing here: use seeding and use async seeding. So now instead of using the has data approach, you can do a tiny little seeder interface, and inside of the actual implementation you can perform the logic for seeding. So now you're able to seed data with particular logic. So instead of using has data, static data, defining the IDs and all of this, you basically create a tiny routine. Like if the role exists, then we go back, and otherwise we create it, and if that succeeded, we go back, and otherwise we log a message. But this begs the question though, where are you supposed to seed the administrative account? Now, if your question is just how do I make an account and make an administrative, well, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. But all of them have their own little problems, and I don't like particularly seeding user information, especially user accounts or administrative accounts, because it opens you up to having to store this information somewhere to begin with, which is not that much of a problem if you just use environment variables, right? But still, it seems like a bad practice. Personally, anything in relation to seeding data, it is giving me a headache, because no matter what you do, it always feels like you're doing the wrong thing. One thing that does seem correct is creating a CLI, which is like a command line interface to create accounts and delete accounts outside of your application. So now you can create an account without having to use the actual application to create it. In other words, you can create an administrative account using the command line tool and then log into your web application. So you no longer have the paradox of how do I make an account if I don't have an administrative account? Well, you have this one particular CLI tool ability. Now it turns out that there's a whole package for this. It's called System Command Line, and you can create these command setups, provide some arguments, and then add them to this root command thing, and then run them using your console application simply by checking if there's any arguments, and then parsing it, and then invoking it, and going back. So now in theory, you could go into the web server and run this command, and then set up an account, and this solves your issue. Now, there is a secondary issue here, which is how do you hide the CLI from anybody breaking into your web server? Well, then you would just have to host a second application for the CLI and make that unavailable to the user running the actual web application. In my case, I have a deploy user, so I would create a CLI user specifically for the CLI application, or vice versa.